Welcome to the Nourish to Thrive podcast, faith-forward, science-backed strategies for women who want more energy, less weight, and real answers. I'm your host, Tanya Pennington-Miller, a functional nutritional therapy practitioner and functional blood chemistry specialist with a master's degree in applied clinical nutrition. If you're tired of feeling dismissed by your doctor, confused by your labs, and stuck in survival mode, you're in the right place. Here, we simplify the science, we get to the root, and we anchor it all in truth. Because God made your body to heal and thrive, not just survive. It just needs the right kind of support and less noise. Hello, my friend. Welcome into the Nourish to Thrive podcast. I'm so glad you're back with me today. Now, if you were here with me last week for our Q&A episode, a lot of what came out of that conversation pointed me right here to this episode. And honestly, this topic has been sitting at the top of my list for a while. Like, I knew I wanted to do an episode on this because it's one of those things that I get asked about constantly. And I genuinely have a hard time answering in my DMs or, just in a comment because the answer is so nuanced. And so I thought that this deserves a real conversation here and not just one episode like I originally thought. We're actually going to do a 4-part series. Okay, that's what you're getting this month. So for the rest of this month, we're going to do a series on peptides and we are going to dig deep. I'm going to give you something really thorough that helps you think through this and helps you to make the best decision for yourself. Okay, I'm not telling you what to do here. I just want you to have all of the information. So in today's episode, we're going to start with the peptides that everybody is talking about. Okay. And then it seems like everybody is doing it, right? In fact, I want you to think about someone in your life. And I am almost certain that you can picture that person right now. Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a coworker, a neighbor, someone in your family. Like, it's somebody who has struggled with their weight for a really long time. And I mean, really struggled. Okay. Like, they've tried everything. They've eaten differently. They've exercised. Like, they have followed exactly what they're supposed to do, but their weight just would not budge. And this likely went on for years. And sometime in the last year or two, you've been noticing the weight has been dropping off of them. And in some cases, it's all of the weight. Sometimes it might even seem like it's too much weight, right? And you look at them and you think, like, where did the rest of you go? And when you ask them how they've been losing the weight, in many cases, as of lately, it's been some kind of peptide. And how do I know this is something that you've witnessed at least one time over the last couple of years? Because it's happening everywhere. I think the question that comes up for a lot of women is, should I be doing this? Right? Like, is this something that I should look into for myself? And so this is exactly why I want to give you a real, thorough, deep dive today so that you can make the best decision for you. Now, before I get into today's episode, I want to give you a quick lay of the land for this whole series because the word peptide really covers a pretty broad category. And I think it's important to understand what we're working with before we dive in. So there are several different types of peptides that we're going to cover this month. Today, we're going to talk about the GLP-1 receptor agonists, which these are the weight loss peptides that have taken over so much of the conversation right now. So the Ozempics, the Mounjaros, the retatrutides. Okay. And then next week in episode 56, we're going to go into the growth hormone releasing peptides like ipamorelin, CJC 1295. And those work in a completely different way. So we'll dive into that. The week after that, we're going to talk about the healing and repair peptides. Things like BPC 157, TB 500. This is really what a lot of people are calling the Wolverine stack. Okay. And we'll cover why that's the case as well. And then in the final episode of this series, we are going to close out with immune support peptides, things like thymosin alpha 1. Okay. And we're going to have a bigger conversation about how to think about this whole category. And then, of course, where I actually land in all of it. So that's where we are headed this month. And here's the thing that I want you to hold on to for today's episode and really for this whole series. is that there is a difference between a tool and a solution. And most of the conversation happening around these peptides right now is treating them like they're the same thing, and they are not. A tool can produce a result. Okay. A GLP-1 peptide produces a result. And I'm not here to dispute that because the weight loss data is real. People are losing a significant amount of weight on these peptides. And in many cases, they're losing it faster than they ever thought they could. But a solution addresses the reason the problem existed in the first place. And that's a very different thing. Your body stores excess weight because something in its environment is telling it to. I mean, that can be anything from hormonal imbalances, blood sugar instability, dysregulated cortisol patterns, increased inflammatory load, a dysregulated nervous system. Like your weight is a communication. And whatever mechanism a peptide is using to produce weight loss does not address the underlying signals. The root cause stays exactly where it is, even if the weight is coming off, even if the numbers on the scale are moving in the direction you want them to move. So as we walk through this today, I want you to just keep asking yourself, like, is this addressing the root cause for me? Or is this changing the outcome while the root stays exactly where it is? Because that question is going to matter a lot when we get to what happens when we stop taking the peptides. So let's talk about what is a GLP-1 and how does it actually work? So GLP-1 stands for glucagon-like peptide 1. And this is what I want you to know about it. It's actually a hormone that your gut already produces naturally, and it does this primarily in response to eating. And its job in the body is to do several things at once. It signals to your brain that you're full. It slows down how quickly food moves out of your stomach. And it helps to trigger insulin release to manage your blood sugar after a meal. So when you eat, your gut makes a small amount of GLP-1. You feel satisfied, you stop eating, the signal fades. Now, the peptides that we're talking about are designed to mimic that same hormone, and they technically are called GLP-1 receptor agonists, which is just a way of saying they bind to the same receptors that your natural GLP-1 does, and they activate them, but they do it at a much higher concentration and for a longer period of time than your body ever would naturally produce it on its own. And the effect of that is a significantly reduced appetite, a significantly slowed gastric emptying, and for many people, significant weight loss. Okay. So let me walk you through what's actually out there right now, because the names can be really confusing, I think. And so I want to give you a framework that helps them make sense. So here's the thing to understand first. A lot of these medications started out as diabetes drugs. Like, the weight loss was so dramatic that pharmaceutical companies were like, we want a piece of this, right? Like, they went back and got a separate FDA approval for the same molecule at a higher dose, specifically for weight management. And that's why you keep seeing paired names. I'm going to run through some of them for you. I think the most well-known is going to be semaglutide, which you probably know as Ozempic. And that was originally approved for type 2 diabetes. And again, the weight loss results were so dramatic that it became one of the most talked about drugs in the country. And eventually that same molecule at a much higher dose was approved specifically for weight management, okay, under the name Wegovy. So Ozempic and Wegovy are the same drug, just different doses and different FDA indications. There's also an oral version actually of the semaglutide called Rybelsus. This was approved for diabetes, and it gives people who don't want the injections an alternative. I think a lot of people don't necessarily love having to inject themselves. And then the same pattern plays out with liraglutide, which is Victoza for diabetes and Saxenda for weight loss management. And then we have tirzepatide, which you've probably heard of as Mounjaro for diabetes, and then they call it Zepbound for weight loss. Okay. And tirzepatide is, let's slow down with this one for a minute, because This one actually works a little bit differently from like straight semaglutide, okay, Ozempic. Ozempic only targets the GLP-1 receptors, where tirzepatide targets two receptors, GLP-1 and GIP. And GIP stands for glucose-dependent insulinotropic polypeptide, which is a mouthful. So let's just call it what it is. Another gut hormone that works alongside a GLP-1 to manage your blood sugar and to signal to your brain that you're full. And because tirzepatide is targeting both of those pathways at the same time, the weight loss results tend to be more significant than what we see with just semaglutide alone. This is why it's been getting so much attention. And then we have retatrutide, and this one is generating, I think, the most conversation right now, especially in the functional world. So let's dig into this one a little bit. Retatrutide is a triple agonist. So this means that it's now targeting three receptor pathways at one time. So you have the GLP-1, GIP, and glucagon. And the third one, the glucagon piece, is what makes it different from everything else in this class. So we talked about what GLP-1s and GIPs do. Glucagon is a hormone produced by your pancreas. And when it's activated in combination with the GLP-1 and GIP, the way retatrutide does it, it actually increases your energy expenditure and promotes fat oxidation. So this means that your body is burning more fat as fuel. And that's the piece I think that has a lot of functional practitioners excited, because it's not just suppressing your appetite or just slowing down your gastric emptying. It's also telling the body to ramp up how much energy to burn. And the weight loss results coming out of these clinical trials have really been pretty staggering. The Triumph 4 phase 3 trial showed a 28.7% body weight reduction at 68 weeks. And that translated to an average of up to 71.2 pounds of weight loss. And those are numbers this class of peptides has never seen before. So, and it's important to point out that retatrutide is actually still in phase 3 trials and not yet FDA approved. And so the people who are already taking it, they're actually accessing it through research only or compounding channels. And what that means is there's no standardized manufacturing oversight and no regulatory accountability if something goes wrong. So that's just worth understanding before you go down that road, okay? And I also want to be transparent about where I stand on the functional community's enthusiasm around this one. I respect a lot of the practitioners who are pushing retatrutide. These are people that I follow, whose work I respect, whose clinical results I take seriously. And I understand the excitement because the numbers are real. And the glucagon mechanism does add something genuinely different to the conversation. But my position is still the same. Dramatic weight loss results do not tell us that the underlying metabolic environment has been addressed. And I think that distinction is really important, especially for women in midlife whose hormonal and nervous system picture is layered and complex, to say the least. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about microdosing, because I think there's a lot of buzz around this word, which basically means that you're taking amounts lower than the standard approved dosing. Okay. A lot of times they're doing this to manage side effects or to save money, because these peptides can be pretty expensive. And the formal clinical evidence for effectiveness at those very small doses is not robust yet. But I mean, I personally know people who are microdosing and getting really great results. So this is an area where the lived experience and the published research have not quite caught up to each other, but I'm sure we'll get there. So here's where I want to spend a little bit of time now, because this is the part that doesn't always make it into the conversation. Okay. The first concern is gut motility. Like, these peptides slow your gut motility to keep you fuller longer. And for some people, they slow it significantly. And what that can look like in some cases can be nausea, bloating, constipation, reflux, just feeling uncomfortably full for hours after a meal. And in more serious cases, you can get a condition called gastroparesis, where food is literally sitting in your stomach too long because the stomach can't empty it the way that it should. And unfortunately, women are more susceptible to those slowing effects than men are. And in some cases, the GI consequences are not small. The second concern is what is happening to your body composition while you're on these peptides, and then what happens when you stop. I know that we have all heard the terms Ozempic face or Ozempic butt, okay? And I want to explain what is actually happening there because it's not just, a cosmetic observation. A significant portion of the weight loss on these GLP-1 peptides comes from lean muscle mass, not just from losing fat. And that hollowed out look in the face or the flat, sagging appearance in the glutes, that is what losing muscle alongside fat looks like on the body. And for women at midlife who are already working hard to hold on to muscle as, estrogen is declining, adding significant muscle loss on top of that is a really important consideration. Okay. And then when you stop, the research is very clear on this. The majority of people do regain a large portion of the weight they lost, often within a year. But here's what makes that especially significant. When you stop and you regain the weight, you almost exclusively are regaining fat, right? You're not gaining the muscle back. So your body composition has actually shifted in the wrong direction, and that is not good for your metabolism in the long term. So this brings me back to where we started, the tool versus the solution. These peptides reduce how much you eat. They do not change why your body was holding on to weight in the first place. They don't address hormonal imbalance. They don't restore your cortisol rhythm. They don't improve insulin sensitivity at the root level. They don't support nervous system regulation. And they don't tell your body that it's safe to let go of what it's been holding on to. And I want to say something here because I do have a nuanced position on all of this. I am not standing on a hill saying these peptides are wrong for everyone, because I have seen situations where someone was in a place metabolically and physically where they needed a tool to get some traction, and these peptides provided that. And I'm not going to dismiss that. I think about like the sleeve surgery, for example. I have seen the sleeve genuinely help people who have tried everything, who, found themselves in a dangerous place. And the side effects of the sleeve are real. But for that particular subset of people, when you weigh those side effects against where they were otherwise heading, it was worth it for them. Now, that does not mean that the sleeve is right for everyone. And it doesn't mean that I would recommend it broadly, but I understand why it exists and why some people have needed it. That's kind of where I sit with the GLP-1s. They work for some people. They do come with real trade-offs, and they do not address the root cause of why your metabolism stopped responding the way it did. And it's important to understand that the root cause does not just go away because the number on the scale does. Okay, so what do I actually want you to do with this information? If you are currently on a GLP-1 peptide and you are listening, I am not telling you to stop. What I'm saying is that there are a few things I would really prioritize while you're taking one. Number one is I really want you to focus on protecting your muscle because of the muscle loss risk we just talked about. Making sure you are eating enough protein even while your appetite is significantly suppressed. This is really important. This is not the time to eat very little of everything. Even when your appetite is small, you want to be very intentional about getting real protein at every meal and pairing that with consistent strength training. Okay, not chronic cardio. Like, this is one of the most important things you can do to protect your lean tissue and to protect your metabolism in the long term. Number two is supporting your gut. So given what these peptides do to your motility, it's really important to pay attention to your digestive health. So staying well hydrated is very important because slowed motility makes hydration even more critical than usual. Eating smaller, more frequent meals rather than large ones can really help because a stomach that's already emptying slowly does not need a large volume of food on top of that. Okay. And then digestive enzymes are very worth considering here to support breakdown. when your motility is sluggish. Okay. And in fact, I will even include a link to some digestive enzymes. My favorite digestive enzymes, if you are not taking those, I highly recommend you hop on those, and I'll put those in the show notes. Ginger is also really great, whether it's as a tea or a supplement, because there's real evidence behind it for nausea and motility support. Okay. Supporting your gut microbiome through probiotics or fermented foods, okay, is really important because, again, that slowed motility can really affect the bacterial environment in your gut over time. And if constipation is an issue, then certainly make sure you're on some magnesium. Magnesium glycinate is my favorite, which I've talked about before on this podcast, can be genuinely helpful for that specifically. And then make sure that you are doing the root cause work in the window that this creates. And this is one of the most important things that I want to leave you with. If a GLP-1 does create some traction for you, I want you to use that window. Use it to address what was actually driving the weight in the first place, because the peptide is not going to do that part for you. And what you do inside that window is going to determine what happens when you eventually stop. And I want to mention something here, because one of the things I hear women get the most excited about when they start these peptides is something called the food noise. The food noise goes away, right? When we take a GLP-1. And if you've experienced food noise, you know exactly what that means. It's that constant mental chatter about food, like that thinking about what you're going to eat next, the cravings that just don't quiet down, the obsessive loop that runs in the background all day long. And for a lot of women, these peptides turn that off like almost completely. And that feels like nothing short of a miracle in that moment. And I get it. I do, because that kind of mental quiet around food is something a lot of women have never experienced before. But here's what I want you to understand. For most women, the food noise comes back right as soon as they stop the peptide. Because the food noise was the symptom, not the problem. It was often being driven by blood sugar instability, by dysregulated cortisol, by a nervous system that was running in survival mode. And the peptide quieted the signal without addressing what was generating it. And the other piece of this is that, and I think this is really important to name, is that most people cannot afford to stay on these peptides indefinitely. I mean, they're pretty expensive. And insurance coverage is pretty darn inconsistent. I know a lot of people whose, insurance covered it for a period of time and then simply stopped. These peptides weren't designed with a clear off-ramp in mind. So if the only thing keeping the food noise away is the peptide, and the peptide is not a permanent solution for most, then we need to be asking a deeper question about what is actually driving it. And if you are someone who is not currently on a peptide, but you've been considering starting one of these, I just want you to go in with your eyes open. Ask your provider about, monitoring body composition, not just body weight. Ask about a plan for the long term, and make sure that somewhere in the conversation, the root cause is being addressed, not just the symptom. So I want to close with something that has been sitting with me as I've been preparing this episode. Isaiah 55:2 says, "Why spend money on what is not bread, and your labor on what does not satisfy? Listen to me, and eat what is good, and you will delight in the richest of fare." And I know that verse is speaking to something so much bigger than weight loss, but I keep coming back to it in the context of everything that we've been talking about today, because I think it is asking us a really honest question. Why are we spending our money and our energy on something that produces a result without addressing what's actually underneath it? Because when I read what does not satisfy, I hear what does not get to the root. What quiets the symptom without healing the source. And when I read, "Listen to me and eat what is good," I hear an invitation to go deeper, to stop reaching for the faster result and start asking what the body actually needs to be truly nourished and truly supported. And I want to say this very clearly. This is not a judgment of anyone who has chosen one of these peptides, because the pull toward a faster result is deeply human. Like, we are here in the flesh doing our best. And I understand that. I really do. But God designed your body to communicate. And the weight it is holding on to is part of that communication. It's telling you something about what it needs. And when we address what it's actually saying, when we nourish the body in a way it was designed to be nourished, I believe we get access to something the scale can never show us. And that's what I want for you. Not just the result. I want the real thing for you. If today's episode helped you understand what is actually happening with these peptides and helped you think through this more clearly for yourself, that is exactly what I set out to do. If this conversation is making you curious about what the root cause picture actually looks like in your own body, this is the exact work I do inside my DNA Reset for Fat Loss Academy. And I will leave a link for you in the show notes to the wait list. I'll be transparent, enrollment does not open again until early 2027, but being on the wait list is really helpful because there are also going to be other things that I will open up for enrollment before we get to the academy. So get yourself on that list and you'll have all the info. Next week, again, episode 56, we're going to be moving into a different part of the peptide world. So we're going to talk about the peptides that I actually have a different relationship with, the ones that work by supporting your body's own hormone production rather than overriding your appetite. Okay. And that conversation looks very different from today's. So I don't want you to miss it. Make sure you come back. Thank you so much for spending time with me today, and I'll see you right back here next week, sister. That's it for today on the Nourish to Thrive podcast. If you found value here, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, or send it to someone who's walking a similar path. Keep showing up, keep asking questions, and know that healing is possible, especially when you trust the one who designed your body to heal. Until next time, stay rooted in truth and nourished in grace.